Roy Jones Jr. Here we go.
This is high-speed chess. That's what you're watching.
So I got a comment today. A guy said, I don't know if I'll be able to find it, put it on the screen, but he said, "You're young." I'm not too young, but I see what he's saying. He said, "You're young. You don't know Roy Jones was unbeatable in his prime." And I said, you know what? Maybe I am too young to understand the fighter Roy Jones was. So today I took time out of my day. I didn't want to record today. I wasn't supposed to record today, but I'm going to take the time out of my day. We're going to do a deep dive on Roy Jones's resume. Just see how great he was. We're going to be using BoxRec. We're going to be using the Ring Magazine, and we're going to be using some articles. This may be a more lengthy video, guys, so buckle in. Let's look at Roy Jones's career. We're going to fast forward past all these all these guys. You know, typically fighters start their first couple 15-20 fights not fighting the best guys. We're gonna skim past that. His first 12 rounder was against Percy Harris in Atlantic City. He stopped him in the 4th round. This was at a catchweight, maybe. Percy Harris wasn't a great fighter. It was his last fight. He had a very short career from 1989 to 1992. We can all agree Percy Harris is not a fighter worth mentioning on Roy Jones's resume. Probably neither is Glenn Wolfe. Glenn Wolfe, this was his last fight as well. He lost to James Toney the fight before that. Maybe a really scrappy fighter. Had a really short career. Had about a 10-year career. The first notable name on Roy Jones's resume is going to be Bernard Hopkins, which he beat in 1993 for the vacant IBF middleweight title. And Washington State? Okay. Washington State? Okay. He beat Bernard Hopkins by a unanimous 116-112 across the board. That'll make that an 8-4. Who was Bernard Hopkins? He's obviously one of the greatest fighters of all time. I think he's greater than Roy Jones, actually. But B-Hop lost his first fight, and then he went on to win his next 22. You know, he was never really a knockout artist, but he's a really good fighter. They both were making their title debuts against each other. Roy Jones got the better of them. I think this is a really great win for Roy Jones. I think this is a really great win. He goes on to fight. I cannot pronounce this guy's name. He stops him in the 6th round in St. Louis. This guy finished his career 44-13. Not a lot of notable anything going on. So not a great fight. This was at 168, I believe. Then he moves up, or he stays at 168. He fights. Cannot pronounce his name. Guy was 12-7. Not that great of a fighter. He went unanimous decision against that guy. Goes against Danny Garcia. He's 25-12 at the time. He stopped him in 6. Don't think we gotta do much of a dive on him. Not that great of a fighter. Thomas Tate, he then goes on to fight for the middleweight title once again. So he was fighting at like a 168, 164 for a while. He moves back down to fight for the title again. He stops Thomas Tate in 2 rounds. Thomas Tate, let's take a look at him. This was in 1994. See who Thomas Tate was before Roy Jones beat him. You know what really pops out at me is this guy had a question mark on his resume that tells me they didn't know how many rounds they were going to fight, which really makes me think like, yo, I don't know about this guy. Thomas Tate also fought for the WBC middleweight title against Julian Jackson, and surprisingly Julian Jackson did not knock him out. Thomas, like most of his resume is just question marks. Like, I'm gonna be honest, it's really hard to gauge a guy when they didn't even know how many rounds he was gonna fight that night. A lot of his fights are missing a lot of documentation. I'd say the best thing he did was lose to Percy Harris, I guess, for the IBF Intercontinental title and going decision with Julian Jackson. He actually won the WBC Continental America's middleweight title against a guy who was 13-10. So, with that being said, Thomas Tate, not the greatest fighter. He beats James Toney. James Toney had a crazy resume at this point. We don't even have to go back and look at it. James Toney was the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in 1994, and Roy Jones Jr. made him look like an amateur. That was in 1994, and MGM Grand in Las Vegas. This was the fight that put Roy Jones on the map, and in 1994, it put him at the top of super middleweight across the board. 93, James Toney was also #1 at super middleweight, obviously. Pound for pound, Toney was #3. I'm sorry. Yeah, Purnell was #1. That put Roy Jones up to #2 after Roy Jones was #8. So I always thought Toney was #1. Toney was #3. Roy was #8. He goes on to fight Antoine Byrd in 95. If we go to 95, this was at what weight? 68. 1995, Antoine Byrd was ranked nowhere. Who was Antoine Byrd? Why did Roy Jones defend his title against this guy? Antoine Byrd. He fought Roy in 95. Again, the question marks on the resume. He's fighting 10 rounders. He's not fighting 12-round fights. The last time he had a world title fight was against Lindell Holmes. He went split decision on that one. He's never held a world title. Not the greatest fighter again from Roy Jones. He goes on, he fights Vinny Paz in 95. We know Vinny Paz. Vinny Paz was ranked #6. What was Vinny Paz doing at this point? He got stopped in 6 rounds by Roy Jones in 95. He came off beating Duran at 68. And you guys are gonna hate me for this, but Roberto Duran was not a great fighter at 68. He was a pretty bad fighter at 68. I don't even know if he ever won a world title, but you guys are gonna say that, oh well, Duran, he was coming off the Duran win. Not a great win, but I will say he was coming off a pretty impressive win streak from 1991 up until 1995. I don't think he ever held a world title though. Yes, he held the lightweight title. Okay. He made a pretty quick jump from lightweight to light heavyweight in just 8 years, or 168. In 8 years, he made that jump, and he fought Roy Jones Jr. What did he do after losing to Roy Jones? Not much. Never fought for a world title. Actually, his second to last fight he did. Vinny Paz is a very decent win. I'll give Roy Jones that much. That's a very decent win. He goes on to fight Tony Thornton in 1995. Tony Thornton was ranked nowhere in the top 10 in 95. Tony Thornton was 37-6 when he fought Roy. Finished his career 37-7. This was his last fight. He was coming off a loss to James Toney. That was in 93 at super middleweight. He had 2 world title fights in which he both lost. Never held the world title. Again, not the greatest fighter. Very decent, very solid fighter. Compared to Roy Jones, very, very average. He then moves up to a catch weight and he fights Murky Sosa. Maybe this was at 175, but he fights Murky Sosa. This was in 1996. Murky Sosa was ranked #6 at the light heavyweight division. He was 26-4 with 2 draws when he fought Roy Jones Jr. And let me see, before that, he never held a world title, never had a world title fight. Actually, for his entire career, he never fought for a world title. Goes back down, fights Eric Lucas. Eric Lucas was 19-2 when he fought Roy Jones in 96. He finished his career 39-8-3. This was in 96 he fought Roy, right? So he's coming off the Carl Willis TKO stoppage in a 10-rounder. He's coming off a loss for the light heavyweight title a year before. I think that was his first world title fight. It may have been his only. Well, he fought Roy for the title, obviously. No, he actually goes on and wins the super middleweight title and defends it against guys like Vinny Paz. WBC's world super middleweight title. So Eric Lucas, not a bad win. Where was he ranked at the time of fighting Roy? What weight is this? What weight are we at? We are at 168. Okay, 1996, 168. Eric Lucas was not ranked, but he did go on to have a pretty decent career. He captured the super middleweight title and he defended it 3-4 times. It's not a bad win. I'm not mad at that one. Bryant Brandon was 16-0 when he fought Roy. Roy stopped him in 2 rounds. This was in 1996 as well. We could look. Bryant Brandon. What weight are we at? 168 still. Bryant Brandon was not ranked. Where was he at before? And where was he at after facing Roy? He finished his career 22-2. In 05, he won on question marks on the resume again. 6 rounders, 8 rounders. He did fight a 12 rounder. He was actually making his world title debut against Roy Jones. So that is a bit of a head scratcher there. Don't know why Roy Jones fought that guy. Mike McCallum. What a great fighter Mike McCallum was. So Mike McCallum, Roy Jones beat him unanimous decision at 175. His first official bout at 175 for the WBC interim title. I'm pretty sure Mike McCallum was ranked. This is what, 1996 still? Roy Jones is fighting. He fought 4 times this year. That's a big scratcher for me as well. If you're fighting 4 times in a year, you're not fighting the best opposition. That's physically impossible. But I'll give Roy Jones the benefit of the doubt. In 96, he faced Mike McCallum, who was ranked number 9 at light heavyweight. Mike McCallum, a great fighter, we all know. This was his second to last fight. He was coming off a unanimous decision in Germany against Ali Sadi. Okay. He was coming off a title shot, which he lost. He also, he was the world champion, actually. Yeah, okay, so he won the interim in 94. He defended that title twice, and then he lost that title. Went on, took a tune-up, and then tried his shot against Roy Jones for the interim title and lost. So Mike McCallum's not a bad win. That's not a bad win. It goes on, he fights Montel Griffin, disqualification. Montel Griffin, Roy Jones was disqualified. This was Roy Jones' first ever official loss. They run it back. He KOs Montel Griffin in the first round for the WBC World Light Heavyweight Championship. Montel Griffin, this was in 97. Montel Griffin was ranked number 4. Montel Griffin, when did he fight Roy? 97. He was coming off a win over James Toney. I think that's all that needs to be said. Yeah, I think that's all that needs to be said. Then he beats Roy for the title, obviously off the DQ. So Montel Griffin was a really great win. I'll give him that much. Virgil Hill, a guy I wasn't really too high on. I'm never a big fan of Virgil Hill, but he did stop Virgil Hill in 4 rounds to the body. Virgil Hill, he's a Hall of Famer. Not the craziest career. I want to say he is a gold medalist. Let me see. Virgil Hill was coming off of a loss before this fight. He was coming off of a loss. Did Virgil Hill ever hold a title? I thought he did. Yeah. Okay. IBF light heavyweight title, and he lost. He never defended a world title. So Virgil Hill's a Hall of Famer. You can't take that away from him. Is it the greatest win ever? Absolutely not. He goes on, he fights Lou DeVille in 98. Let's go to 98 here. Lou DeVille was number 5. Where was he at before fighting Roy and after? He was 27-1, finished his career 36-6. In 1998, he fought Roy. He was coming off a really good run of knocking out a lot of guys, 10-round fights, a lot of question marks on these guys' resumes again. He was making his world title debut. and that was the only time he ever fought for a world title. Otis Grant, he stopped Otis Grant in 10 rounds. What year are we in? 98. 98. Otis Grant was not ranked at light heavyweight. We can see where Otis Grant was. He was 31-1-1. 31-1-1. Otis Grant fought Roy in 98. Before that, he was a middleweight champion. Okay, so he was a world champion. He defended this title multiple times. Okay. So Roy moved this guy up 2 weight classes. Where was he ranked at middleweight? Otis Grant was the number 5 middleweight. Okay, it's a bit strange. He fought in May at middleweight, and then November he moved up 15 pounds to fight Roy. He's only ever, well, he actually fought at light heavy. I don't know what weight this is, but he fought a bit closer to 175 earlier on in his career. Otis Grant, not the greatest win. Richard Frazier, this is a very interesting guy right here. I know somebody personally who knows Richard Frazier. I'm pretty sure. I hope he sees this video so he can fact check me. Richard Frazier was a full-time police officer when he fought Roy Jones. And the guy that I know, he despises Roy Jones for fighting his friend who was a full-time New York cop at the time. But he made the money. Richard Frazier was a very bad fighter. Like I said, he was a full-time cop. He was trying to pay the bills. The Roy Jones fight came to his door and he took it. He was obviously stopped in 2. Never had a world title fight. Never had a 12-round fight. Or he did have a 12-round fight, but not a great fighter. Not a great fighter whatsoever. Why did Roy Jones fight him? I do not know. Goes on, he fights Reggie Johnson. Reggie Johnson in 99. Reggie Johnson was ranked number 4. And we look at Reggie Johnson, he was 44-7 in 99. After fighting Roy, he went on to have a bit of an okay career. Never was able to get back to that world-class level. Before fighting Roy, he was actually world champion. He actually unified with Roy. So that's pretty dope. That is pretty dope. He actually unified with Roy Jones. I believe that's a great win. Beating an active champion, you can't really diminish that. Reggie Johnson, great win. David Telesco in 2000. David Telesco was number 5 right after Reggie Johnson. He finished his career 30-8. 2000. After fighting Roy, he never gets back up to that championship level. Before fighting Roy, he never has a world title fight. Roy Jones gave David Telesco his world title debut. Richard Hall. This is a very interesting topic here. We're going to get back to Richard Hall. We're going to go over Richard Hall for now, and we'll get back to him actually. We're going to go straight to Eric Harding. Eric Harding, 19-0 in 2000. He was ranked number 3, really high in the division. 23-4. Went on to fight Chad Dawson in 2006. But before that, making his world title debut, never got back up to that world class level. Here we go. And now it was Eric Harding, yeah. Which Roy Jones stopped in 10 rounds. Goes on, fights Derek Harmon. Pretty sure he was ranked in 01. Yep, number 10. The number 10 guy, Derek Harmon. Finished his career 25-7. Roy Jones beat him in 01. Never gets back up to that world-class level. And he was making his world title debut against Roy Jones Jr. Julio Cesar Gonzalez in 2001 was number 6, 27-0 at the time. He actually, Let me see. This might be a good win for Roy. 2001. He was coming off of winning a couple regional, national type of titles. Coming off the stoppage of this guy. Don't know who this guy is. Been at 175 for a while and never lost. A lot of majority split decision, a lot of knockouts, a lot of everything going on here. But he never lost. He was making his world title debut against Roy Jones Jr. And he went on to capture another title. Never defended it. Got another world title shot, lost. Got another one, lost. Okay. Not a terrible fighter. Not terrible. He was 27-0. I'd say that's a pretty decent win. Pretty decent. Glenn Kelly in 2002. Glenn Kelly was not ranked. Yeah, Glenn Kelly was not ranked at light heavyweight. He was 31-3. Roy Jones Jr. caught him in 2002. Glenn Kelly never goes back to that world-class level. He actually retires shortly after. Seems like he was a regional guy fighting in the Australia scene, the Pacific scene, never really at the world-class level until Roy Jones found him and decided to fight him. Not a great win. Clinton Woods, I believe, was ranked in 02. We'll go to Clinton Woods. Clinton Woods was not ranked. Thought I'd seen him. I'm assuming he's coming off some losses or something. No, he was on a good win streak. He was 32-1. Finished his career 42-5. He fought Roy Jones in 02. Went to a draw with Glenn Johnson. He won the WBC title eliminator in 2001. He was making his world title debut. He was a British fighter, okay. The UK guy. Really big in the UK scene. Probably the best light heavyweight that country could offer at the time. He got another shot at the IBF title against Glenn Johnson, which he lost. He got another shot for the vacant title. He stopped the guy in 5. He defended that title 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Lost it to Antonio Tarver. And then got another shot at it, lost it again. He's a pretty good fighter. Who were we looking at? Glenn Kelly, was it? Who were we looking at? Was it Clinton Woods? Clinton Woods. Clinton Woods was a good fighter. That is a really good win on his resume. He goes on, he beats John Ruiz. John Ruiz is one of the weaker heavyweights of the in terms of being a champion. We all know John Ruiz had the fights with Holyfield. He beat Holyfield, took Holyfield to a draw. We know John Ruiz, but he was an okay heavyweight. I think it's a good win for Roy. Moving up that much weight and beating John Ruiz was really great. Then it was the John Ruiz fight. We see the decline in Roy Jones Jr. He looked slow. His reflexes were off, and I get he was moving up in weight, but he did look. There was something off with Roy. He got hit a lot against John Ruiz. He did not look nothing about Roy Jones Jr. was spectacular in that fight. He goes on, he goes back down, fights Antonio Tarver in 2003. Antonio Tarver was the number 1 guy. He beats him by majority decision. Antonio Tarver, great fighter, Hall of Fame fighter. We know who Antonio Tarver is. Hall of Fame legend. He even fought a heavyweight. Didn't know that. So nothing you can really say about the Tarver win. What kind of messes up Roy's legacy is at the age of 34, he gets knocked out by Tarver in 2. All right. Goes on. He tries to fight for the IBF light heavyweight title against Glenn Johnson. Gets knocked out by him in 9. Take a look at Glenn Johnson. Glenn Johnson finished his career 54-21. He knocked out Roy Jones in 2004? 2004. He goes on, he beats Antonio Tarver. Then loses to him in a rematch. Never run the trilogy. But he goes on, Glenn Johnson Might have been a good fighter at the time. In totality, not a great fighter. So Roy Jones gets stopped twice, knocked out twice. And then that's where we see the decline of Roy Jones. That's when he loses to Tarver again. That's when he goes on and he just starts fighting for just random purposes that nobody can explain. So I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on the greatness of Roy Jones and kind of put a magnifying glass, a microscope on who he was when he was in his prime. I believe he was in his prime when he fought Tarver, right? I think he just lost. I'm not gonna say he was in his prime. I think he probably left his prime when he fought Ruiz, but I think he was still really good when he fought Tarver, right? He just lost. So when we're looking at Roy Jones's resume, first of all, we're gonna get back to Richard Hall before I forget. This fight took place in 2000. Both of them did. Roy Jones tested positive for steroids. He was 5 or 6 times over an acceptable level. Richard Hall was 10 times over the acceptable level. This is something that's not talked about enough in Roy Jones' career. If you go to BoxRec, there's nothing stating he tested positive and Richard Hall did as well. There's no contest. It wasn't a rule of no contest. When you look it up, there's nothing that really pops up. Only thing you're going to get is Google AI. There's really no articles covering this. Even videos. There's nothing, no videos really covering this. 31-year-old Roy Jones at the peak of his powers. Roy Jones at the peak of his powers. Roy Jones Jr. versus Richard Hall. No videos covering that Roy Jones tested positive. We got one right here, right? 25 years ago, Roy Jones defeated Richard Hall. Not a lot of people are talking about this guy had 6 times the natural amount of steroids that a adult male should have. All right, we even have a Reddit article. Why did everyone ignore Roy Jones Jr. failing PED test? And the big thing about this Richard Hall fight, I believe it's the most impactful fight we're going to look at today on Roy Jones's resume. Because when you look at Richard Hall, wasn't a great fighter. He finished his career at 30-14. All right, Richard Hall was very far from being a great fighter. Even, let's see, before he fought Roy in, 2000. Making this world title debut once again. Did he go on to fight for a world title ever again? Yes, he lost both of them. He was stopped by the same guy in Germany. Never fought for a world title again, I believe. Yeah. So Richard Hall was not a great fighter. And that makes me think, why did Roy Jones take steroids for this guy in particular? Why Richard Hall? Why just Richard Hall? Because he didn't. Not just for Richard Hall. I don't know how long Roy Jones Jr. was on steroids. But I'm under the assumption that if he was taking steroids for Richard Hall, why wouldn't he do it for Montel Griffin? Why wouldn't he do it for Mike McCallum? That doesn't make sense. To fight your entire career clean and then you get into a random fight in Indianapolis against Richard Hall and say, okay, now I want to start taking steroids. Now I'm being introduced to steroids to the point I'm coming in 6 times over the accepted amount. Right? And it's kind of starting to make sense. We're kind of going off here. Let me see. Can I find a picture of Roy Jones' physique? This guy was an absolute demon. Look at this guy. There's a whole Reddit article on that. Maybe we'll tap on that. Look at Roy Jones. Look at his arms. This guy was cut. When was this picture taken? Who is this against? This is at Caesars. Right? Or maybe this is a Caesars sponsor. Huh. I don't know. Somebody in the comments let me know, where's this picture taken? Is Roy Jones natty or the juice? What are they about to show me here? When horse breeders run out of Winstrol, they call Roy Jones Jr. for a bottle of sweat. Never lifted a weight in his life. Heavy bag, speed bag, and sparring only, but he only drank the broth of 2 duck eggs per day. Don't know what that means. That shoulder screams steroids. He literally tested positive for steroids. Roy Jones literally tested positive. Roy is generally one of the boxing GOATs and was even more athletically gifted than Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson. Seriously. He was named Boxer of the Decade in the 90s. Don't know how he got that over Lennox Lewis when other juiced up boxers were around. Holyfield Tyson. He popped positive in the early 2000s. No one cares because he was just that effing dominant. Just like how no one cares about Jones and still considers him one of the GOATs. Okay. So you guys see what I'm saying here. I'm not making this up. I'm not pulling this out of my rear end. This is a legitimate concern I have about Roy Jones's career and his legacy. This isn't speculation. This is something that has happened. He tested positive, and I'm having genuine concerns. If you did it against Richard Hall, what stopped you from doing it your entire career? You guys in the comments, let me know. Do you think Roy Jones was taking steroids for his entire career? Do you guys think he was dabbing in and out of it? Where do you guys see the drastic shift in athleticism and physique in Roy Jones to make you believe he was taking steroids for a majority of his career? You guys let me know in the comments. But the Richard Hall the Richard Hall fight, I believe, is the most impactful fight we're gonna cover today. Outside of that, looking at Roy Jones's career, I gotta be honest here. Let me turn to you guys. Roy Jones is a tremendous fighter. He is. Roy Jones was running through contenders in the division like it was nothing. My frustration with Roy is when he's calling out Floyd Mayweather and he's critiquing Floyd. I can apply those same critiques onto Roy Jones's career as well. He didn't fight G-Man. Didn't fight Julian Jackson, right? He went on, he did fight a young James Toney. He fought James Toney in his prime. He fought B-Hop, not in his prime, but he fought B-Hop on his way up, which is really great. But there was a lot of great fighters Roy could have fought as well. But guess what? He fought Richard Frazier, who was a police officer. He fought Reggie Johnson, right? He went and fought Richard Hall, who was never a great fighter, who he had to take steroids against. So, I'm looking at Roy's career. A lot of great fighters. A lot of good fighters. A lot of fighters who were able to capture world titles later on in their career, or maybe capture them a bit earlier on in their career. But when I'm looking at Roy's career, and despite a lot of these guys being contenders, the common denominator here is most of these guys have never fought for a world title or are making their world title debut. Right? And that is kind of concerning. That's kind of concerning. All right, so I'm gonna compare Roy to somebody who has a bit of a similar career to him. Really dominant, but lacking the names to a degree. All right, let's take a look at Naoya Inoue. Naoya Inoue has his first world title fight in 2014, like 5 fights in. He has his first world title fight. He beats Adrian Hernandez, who was the actual champion at the time. This wasn't a vacant title. Naoya Inoue beat him when he had the title. He defended that title plenty of times. This is what Roy's missing on his resume. A fighter who held the title in 2011, defended it, lost it, got it back, defended it more until he ran into the brick wall of Naoya Inoue. And I'm not saying Adrian Hernandez is just some great, overwhelming fighter. He's not. But Roy Jones is lacking these type of guys on his resume. I'm not looking for everybody to have a name. Right? Let's look at this guy. Naoya Inoue's first ever fight at super flyweight. Do you guys see what I'm saying here? This guy won the WBO World Flyweight title in 2002. Defends it. Defending this title for years. Moves up, gets the Superfly title, loses it to Donaire in a split or unanimous decision. Gets it back, defends it. And then he loses to Naoya Inoue and I don't think he ever gets back up to that level. He has one more world title fight before he retires. All right, this is just a random guy I'm pulling off his resume. Jamie McDonald. I think another super flyweight Inoue fought. He was a Commonwealth champion. Not as great as I thought he was. Okay. He won the IBF World Bantamweight. He won the vacant title. Don't know why he never went on to defend that title. It's going to be a bit weird because BoxRec is missing the WBA. So maybe he's a WBA champion. I think he was. Emmanuel Rodriguez, IBF World Bantamweight champion against Naoya Inoue. Still fighting to this day. Just fought Ryosuke Nishida in a very close fight according to the judges' scorecards. He won the Bantamweight title in 2023 again. Ryosuke Nishida beat him. He beat a fighter in Gary Antonio Russell. The first fight was a no contest. He gets knocked out by Inoue, but he had that title, and he at least defended it once, and he went on to gain it back. He went on to beat a good fighter in Gary Antonio Russell, only losing to Ryosuke Nishida. We know who Nonito Donaire is. Jason Maloney's not the greatest. Paul Butler's not the greatest. We know Stephen Fulton. We know Marlon Tapala is. Marlon Tapala is unified champion at the time. Beat Ahmed Aliyev. Actually held a world title before this at bantamweight. So we're looking at Marlon Tapala. We're calling him a bum, right? A lot of people are saying, "Oh, yeah, anyways, not fighting anybody." We're calling him a bum. He's a 2-division champion. One of those divisions he was unified in. Luis Neri beat Shinsuke Yamanaka, a pound-for-pound fighter. Luis Neri's also 2-division. TJ Doheny's also 2-division. So I'm going off, and I'm it's kind of a lot to unpack in this video. Roy Jones is a great fighter. The level of competition leaves me scratching my head. And I'm not just talking about names, but I'm looking for what Naoya Inoue has on his resume. I'm looking for what Terrence Crawford has on his resume. Not really big names, but guys who had some championship experience or lost and went on to fight for world titles, win world titles, or defend world titles. Roy Jones is lacking that on his resume. That makes me really hesitant to say he has one of the or the highest peak. I think he might be top 5, but the highest peak, I would say no, because his opponents lack championship experience. A lot of guys making their title debut, a lot of guys not able to climb up to that world title level, and that shows they should have never been in the ring in the first place with Roy Jones Jr. That's just my whole take on it. A lot to unpack from this video. This was a really long 37-minute video. You guys tell me, how do y'all feel about this? How do you rank Roy Jones all time? Do you agree or disagree with my takes here? I hope to see you guys in the next one.